Record. There we go. Okay, great. So if anybody would like to code along, again, we're on week 15, day 1. And we're on the nested model DRF page. So everything we do today is not Pokemon related. Instead, we're going to be using this link at the top. I'll put it in the Zoom chat as well. We're going to be dealing with article publications, which is a brand new Django project. So I've already cloned that, onto my computer over here. It is, I basically just cloned it down. And as you see, well, both in the console and also in here, it's got a Docker file. It's got manage.py, setup data. It's got some stuff inside publisher and print. Okay, so first quiz question of the day. Just looking at these two folder trees on the left, can you tell me which one is the project and which one is the app?
Publisher will be the project, and the
Okay.
app would be my, I guess print,
Why?
because publisher holds where you have the settings and so on and stuff like that,
Yep,
and the
that's
main
perfect.
URLs.
Yeah, so the settings, your main URLs, that stuff, like the settings is usually the best indicator to tell you that the project is publisher. And then the fact that you have your apps, your models, your tests, your views, like all of that going in print tells you that that's an app. The other way you can verify that is because we cloned it down, go to installed apps, print is listed in the installed apps. So nice and simple. Sorry, there's a helicopter going overhead. All of this other stuff looks fine. So first of all, this thing is relates to a Docker compose. Yes, well, all right. Why did that should have been installed before? Anyway, so the entire thing is controlled within a Docker compose. Can somebody remind me how I boot up a Docker container that is something I've already created? Well, what command do I need to type in my console to do that?
Docker compose that.
Okay, is that it?
You
Yeah.
need to be a -d if you want to run it in the background.
Okay, is this it? Like Docker compose stop -d. All right, see what happens. All right, so it's created, it's started. I can go to my Docker, and we see that article publications is indeed running. Okay, great. So now I'm just gonna go back in my here, and we can sign in to my database. The database is not Pokedex this time, it's gonna be publisher, right? We can go into that. Oops, wrong one. This is called article publications. By going here, just double check. What is the name of this? Oh, DB1. That's why. Here, let's go up and redo that. Article publications DB1. There we go. Now we're in our database. I can do a nice little /d. We see that there's nothing in there. But I just ran Docker. That should automatically populate my database, right? Or is there something else I need to do first? Or maybe a few things.
Some migration action.
Okay. So here, let me boot up a terminal. Terminal. So are you saying, so again, this is just the basic project. Like I haven't made a virtual environment, I haven't migrated, I haven't done anything. So should I just like run Python manage .py make migrations like right now?
What's in your models.py folder?
Well, there's probably something we need to do before I run my migrations. And again, this is the first.
Do
you want to install requirements?
Okay, I got the last half of that. What I'm going to assume the person who spoke said is the pip install.
Yeah, you would make your Vim and then you would pip install your requirements.
Okay, yeah, so Python, let's make our virtual environment. Ah, this always happens. Okay, and then we just say source, the env scripts activate, or is it bin? I always forget that. Bin, okay. On Windows, like not WSL, but normal Windows, it's scripts. On WSL and Linux, it's bin. Oh, activate. That's why. Activate. Ta-da! Okay, perfect. So now we can do pip install -r requirements.txt. All right. Encountered issue when trying to call scicopg2. Let's change that. Yeah, let's say pip install scicopg2 binary. There we go. And we'll just change this to scicopg2 binary is 2.9.7. We'll just do a pip list. Yeah, that all looks fine. Okay, great. So now let's go back. So I've set up my virtual environment. We've pip installed everything. First, I'm going to check my directory. I'm in the same directory as manage.py. So we're going to say Python manage.py. Let's first make our migrations. I'm definitely in my virtual environment. What do you mean no module named Django? Here, pip install Django. Interesting. So why was Django not installed earlier? That is very mysterious. Here, let's try this again. Okay, I'm gonna pause the recording. I'm gonna resume.
Could it have been from the scicop G2 error, like exited out of the pip install? Because mine
that's
didn't
possible.
do like unicorn either, but when I commented it out the scicop G2 and did that one manually, and it looks like it took the rest after that.
Okay, that could be it. But also make sure that you are installing scicop G2 binary because we are going to need that for the SQL stuff that we're doing later on. So was everybody else able to install all the requirements and get everything running okay so far?
So can we just put scicop G2 binary in the requirements?
Yeah, you should be able to do scicop G2 binary. Just set it to 2.9.7 and then run the install.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody having trouble reaching this stage if you're coding along? Everybody good? Okay, so right now in my views, I just have blank. Right now in the serializers, I also just have blank. This is what we're going to play with very, very shortly. So I've made my migrations. And the next thing that I want to do is here, let's go to my databases. And now we see that I do indeed have a bunch of databases. I've got print article and I've got print article publications. So let's take a look at, let's do the first one. Let's see what's in print article. Okay, so they just have an ID and a headline. And we'll do the same thing for the publications, and that just has an article ID and a publication ID, and there's also print publication. And that's just got title and circulation. All right, so what do these three tables mean? So we can go to our models.py. We've got a field for publication. We've got a field for article. What? Wait, okay. This seems really weird. Why do I only have two models? I've got one model for publication and one model for article. But in here, I have three tables, right? I've got one for print article, one for the article publication. I don't see that table, and one for print publication. Where is this table coming from?
The many-to-many relationship in the table.
Yep, exactly. So just to recap that many-to-many business, in Django allows us to create many-to-many relationships. SQL does not inherently allow for many-to-many relationships unless you create I guess you could call it like a joiner table, which is, again, connecting the article IDs to the publication IDs. So that's why we have to use that for our many-to-many relationship. Okay. The other thing is right now, we don't have any data inside our tables. So let's go ahead and add some. So the first thing that I'm going to do is if we take a look at setupdata.py, we see here that we have some nice scripts that Chad has provided for us that should give us a couple of things that we can put in our database. So how can we use that? So the first thing that we need to do is enter into our special Django Python shell. So we'll do python manage.py shell. We're in there, and then we run this little thing up at the top. So first, let me make sure it runs. It does, great. So let's talk about what this does. So the first thing that this thing does is it opens our setupdata.py file, which, hey, that's everything in here. And then it's going to read the contents of the file. It'll read it into a Python string format. So it'll take all of this stuff and read it out as a string. But this is all Python code, right? We've got our imports, we're setting up objects, we're adding things to publications. So by running exec, it basically runs all of this stuff in the Python shell. It runs each of these individual commands. So let's make sure that that actually works. So let's go to print article. We now have 3 articles. Let's go to the print publication. We have 3 publications. And now we can see here that article 1, which is Tragedy Somewhere, is published in Various Interests Daily and is also published in All About Animals. So great, we've been able to populate our stuff with a little bit of data. Any questions about how we did the setup.py bit? Okay, awesome. So yeah, we've got our models here, right? We've already talked through that. Got publication, got article. We aren't going to work on tests right now. URLs, we've got an article view. That's something we need to work on. So let me pop that open here, and we'll pop serializers, and we'll replace this with models. Okay, so if we go back, here, let me also just exit the shell. We go back to our views. Right now, our views are blank. So let's say that I wanted to get a specific article. How would I write a function that I could run an API call on to get my article view, what would I need to do? Sorry, Chris, can you say one more time?
Create a get method.
Okay, perfect. So let's define a get method. And what do I take as inputs to my get method?
It'd be self and request.
Okay. Anything else?
Whatever the ID is.
Okay, yeah. So we would put in whatever the idea is if we needed one, but this
Yeah.
thing is just supposed to basically get all articles. Okay, so how do we get? Sorry.
Just those two. That yeah.
So let's take somebody else for the next part. How do we get all of the articles?
Similar to like what we would tell you to do in the manage.py shell. You just do like articles equal article dot objects dot all, and that would grab all of the objects from article.
Okay, so can I just return articles like this?
No.
Okay, let's take somebody else now. I want to get participation. Harry, what would I need to do in order to turn this articles into an article thing that I can actually return?
I am not sure how to code this, but if I'm understanding all of this correctly, can you all hear me?
Yep.
I think the serializers should be involved somehow.
Yes, so we will need to do something with serializers. But we won't be doing it with serializers just yet. I just want to show how complicated it can get beforehand. So, does anybody have an idea how we can do it without, or actually, we will need to use serializers. But not in the way that we would do it before. So here, we'll just say do some stuff here, turn this into JSON data, and then we'll just create like a dummy variable. Articles JSON equals hello. And then we'll just return articles JSON. So how do we turn articles from a list of article objects into JSON? So I won't have you guys code up the whole thing actually, because I do realize it'll probably take us a while. But let's look back at our old favorite project, the Pokemon app. I'm sure by now all of you guys remember the CRUD stuff that we did, well, just last week. This is the Pokemon app views.py file that we all worked on together. So we've got our all Pokemon here, and we've got a method that will trigger the get behavior. All right, so what are we doing here? Well, first we're getting all the Pokemon objects ordered by name. So it's still getting all the objects. Then we have to, again, as it says here, we can't send query sets as a JSON response. So we have to use Django's serialize function to turn our query set into a binary string, which then turns it into JSON, and then we can shoot that over and return the JSON. However, let's be honest, this code looks just a little bit ungainly, to say the least, right? Because like if we take a look up here, like for moves, because remember, the moves model is sort of nested within the Pokemon model. Moves is a list of integers, but we need the actual Pokemon instances. So for each Pokemon, you then have to go into each move and then serialize each individual move on top of serializing all the Pokemon and then smush them together and return it. I mean, it's not the most intuitive way to do things. Now, also, what if we needed to, say, input data in this sort of mixed format? Or if we needed to validate a large bunch of data? We don't want to run individual serialized commands every single time. Because honestly, it looks bad and it's bad practice. This is where custom serializers come in handy, which is basically how we're going to get between articles and articles JSON. So let's go over here and let's see. I guess the first thing that we need to do is, where did it go? Where's my code? Here it is. The first thing that we're going to need to do is create our serializers file. So the first thing is we need to import from REST framework. We're going to import all of our serializers because this will basically create a basis for us to work off of and, well, create more serializers for our custom fields. Now, how do we know which field we're going to be creating serializers for? Well, for that, we need to import from models. So we're going to import article and publication. So this guy imports the serializers library. This guy imports our model. So our article model, our publication model, and using those two models, we can get as much data as we want. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to have to do is create individual serializers. So just like for our models, we created a model based off of models.model. We're going to do the exact same thing, but for serializers. So we're going to create a brand new class. Let's call this one publication serializer. And we're going to base this off of serializers.serializer. This is literally the exact same thing that we did when defining publication. Just switch publication to publication serializer, switch model to serializer. Ta-da, we're there. While we're at it, I'm just going to copy paste the same thing, and we'll just change this to article serializer, and that's about it. So what a serializer does, again, if we go back to here, it will take all of the data in your query set and turn it into a string. In order to do that, we need to tell Django what characteristics of our model we want to be serialized. So how can we custom set that? The first thing that we need to do is, unlike before, we need to define a class meta. And then inside of that meta class, we can do all of our little serializer things that we want to. So the first thing that we need to do inside here is, well, I guess we have to do two things. We have to tell it what model we're using and what fields we're using. So the way we specify the model is literally model equals publication. And that says the publication serializer is a serializer that is going to run on publication objects. And then we just specify the fields. So if I remember correctly, the fields list is a tuple, which cannot be changed. And inside of that tuple, we need to put all of the fields that we want to be serialized. So that means we'll be putting in title, we'll put in circulation, but we also need to put in one more field, and that is ID. So what this publication serializer will do when we use it very shortly is it'll take our query set data, and then from that query set data, it'll say, hey, is this a query set of publications? If it is a query set of publications, then take out the ID, take out the title, take out the circulation, put those into a string, send it off to JSON. So that's really what a serializer does. We have to do the exact same thing for our article serializer. So what is it? We have headline and publications there. So we can go ahead and copy this over. We'll change the model to article. We'll change, let's see, models. We got headline and publications. So say headline and then publications. So there's a slight problem here. Can anybody tell me what the problem might be?
Do you
Besides the title.
need
You gotta link publications to the article serializer.
Exactly. Because I mean, right now, sure, it's all well and good. We've got publications field. We've got, article serializers linked to article. Awesome. Publication serializers linked to publication. Great. But there's no relation right now between, publication is clearly linked to article. But I need a way to tell the serializer that publications is not some random thing. The publications list should invoke the publication serializer, right? Remember, that's a list of our JSON objects. So the way we do that is I'm going to say publications equals publication serializer. Let's see, we don't need to have an instance there, but what we do need to say is specify that many equals true. Is that a spacing? No, this needs to get tabbed. There we go. So why do we need to do this? Well, it's exactly as you said, Chris. We need to create a connection between our article serializer and our publication serializer. Why? Because there's a connection in our models between article and publication. If we did not have this line and we ran the code, that would essentially give us the problem that's here on line 42, where the list of publications associated with a given article is just going to return a list of integers, if even that, or a query set, which are both, well, meaningless when we return things. So in order to get the actual instances out, we need to link the two serializers together in this fashion. Does that make sense? Any questions about our serializers so far?
So by saying like many equals true there when it's passed through, that's like saying to Django that it's a many to many relationship. So for each of those relationships that exist in publication, it needs to serialize each article that like each relationship article that would be like a relationship. Like if there's 3 articles, it'll serialize each of the 3 articles independently.
So the end point is correct, but the logic is a little flawed. So the many equals true part does not have anything to do with it being a many to many relationship. All the many equals
Okay.
true bit is saying, hey, publications is, well, a publication, but it's not just one publication. It could be like 50 publications. We don't know how many. So because we don't know how many publications are associated with a given article, we just slap on that many equals true, just to leave room for, hey, what if there's 2 publications associated with article? What if there's 3? What if there's 4? And that's the purpose of that many equals true.
Okay, so you're just saying there's many of them here. And so if there's only one, it'll just do the one. But if there's 5, 7, 50, it'll do just as many as there are
Exactly.
and serialize
yes.
each one. Okay.
Yep. It just helps, again, it helps us prevent errors. There's another thing that we can do, which is also going to be read only equals true. We won't set that for this one, but read only equals true will basically prevent anybody from changing the publications if they access it with an API call. We won't get into that tonight. I believe that'll be a focus of, remember, a future lecture, but something good to know. So that's how we set up our serializers. So again, we want all of the fields to correspond to the fields in our model, and any relationships that we have in our models generally also need to have a relationship between the serializers. So our serializers are basically done now. So you may be wondering, how do we actually use the serializers? And this is where the views.py makes its re-entry. So if we go back again to our views.py here, for our Django Pokemon, we have a get request. Immediately after we get all our Pokemon objects, we have to serialize them, because the only way we can return something is if we serialize the thing, which is what Harry said at the beginning. So instead of using that generic serialized JSON function, though, we now have custom serializers. We have the publication serializer and the article serializer. So why don't we just use those? Well, the first thing we need to do is import our serializer. So we're going to say from .serializers, we're going to import my article serializer and my publication serializer. Okay, great. So actually, we don't really need to import publication serializer, but we can do it anyway, just in case. Otherwise, we still import API view, we still import response, and we still import the article. You know what? Let's also, while we're at it, let's also import the publication model. Again, we won't be referring to the publication model explicitly, but it doesn't hurt to refer to it. All right, so again, here we've got all my article data. Now, the next thing that we can do is we're going to change this from do some stuff here. We're going to say serialize our articles data, turn from query set into JSON data. So instead of saying articles JSON equals, the placeholder that we had before, now all I need to do is run the article serializer on my articles data. And that's going to be the data that I run it on. And then we can just say many equals true so that we are told, or that way Django is told, hey, there might be one article in here. There might be 1,500, but serialize all of them and turn everything into JSON, which is what this one line does. Now, you might be wondering, well, that's great, but what about the publications? Don't those need to get serialized too? They automatically are. Why? Because article serializer automatically runs the publication serializer on any publications associated with that article. So again, I'm going to keep going back and forth between these two because they're really good examples. In our Pokemon case, we had to get the Pokemon, we had to run an initial serializer on it, then we had to open up the JSON of that initial serializer. For each thing inside that initial serializer, we had to make a new serializer for the move objects, and then package all of that up in a response. In contrast, this is literally 3 lines. We get all the articles, we load them all up into the article serializer, and we return it. Nice, easy, simple. Well, oh, actually, I am missing one thing. Let me just make sure that this is here. Well, we don't return articles.json. First, we have to return a response, and then after that, we'll just return the article JSON.data, which will turn it from a serializer object to JSON. But I mean, the point still stands. This is 3 lines that are easy to understand compared to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Also, this approach here, where we use just the generic serializer, I mean, this is only for 2 nested models, right? So imagine if we had like articles, publications, and author lists or subscribers or something. Like you can nest more models within each other. That would massively complicate the code if we wrote it in that other style of the Django Pokemon. However, here, the code stays exactly the same. We just tack on another serializer and we keep moving forward. And that's it. It's really as simple as that. So before I go ahead and test this, anybody have any questions? Here, I'm just keeping this open on the side. Does anybody have any questions about serializers or how they work or anything like that?
Yeah, I got a quick question. I've been using this all method in the serializers. I'm curious if you can use that with the many to many. So basically, instead of writing all of them out, so if you have 20 columns and you don't want to write all of them out, you can use that.
Here, let me copy paste this in, because first I want to make sure the code that we have work successfully. But then after that, we can go back to your question and we can try it for the many-to-many. But any, I guess, more academic questions about the serializers or how we integrated them into the views or anything like that?
I hope you didn't explain this. Sorry, I'm a little sick. I've been sick for like 6
Okay.
days now. If you were to just pass in articles and not the many to true, then are you just going to get like the normal way of serializing it where you'll have the article and then all the publications for that article would just be listed as like a list for that many to many relationship? That way you can kind of serialize it both ways.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions before we test this thing? Okay, let's test. So we're making migrations. Let's migrate. Okay, let's go ahead and manage. Let me start running my server. Okay, and let's go here. Let's open it up. And let me just go to my API. And this would be article. I mean, so I'm not doing this via Postman just for ease, but here we can see that we're getting all the articles. The first article has ID of 1. It's got a headline, and look at that. It shows us all of the publications in all of their glory. ID 2, well, it doesn't have publications, but if it did, it would do the same thing. So, and ID 3, well, you got the picture. We can keep going. But basically, the benefit of using serializers is, I mean, you can see the nested models so clearly, and it works. It works great. So this is the whole benefit of using serializers, is if you are using an API, like we are at Django, and you or your user are making calls to that API, serializers make the data coming back out of it so easy to generate and so easy to interpret, which is why we're teaching you guys how to use them. So just for kicks, why don't we try the fields all that Chris mentioned? So, well, now that we've seen that the serializers are actually working. So let's go.
It should work in publications. I don't know if it's going to work with article with the many-to-many.
So it did work actually. But all it did is it moved publications before headline. It just changed the order. So the benefit, oh yeah, the other benefit of hand typing everything like this is you can set the order of the fields if that's something that's important to you. You can also just use the .all, like it doesn't really matter if you don't care about the field orientation. But to answer your original question, Chris, it sure looks like the all method works even for many-to-many relationships.
Yeah, it's interesting that it adds publications to it.
Well, I mean, that's what it's designed to do, because we included this on line 12, because remember, fields.all is basically saying, all right, ID is a field, headline's a field, publication's a field. Now we know, based on our definition on line 12, that publications, which is included in all, is always going to be our publication serializer, which includes all the publications in it. So if it didn't include that, I would have cause for concern. But that is expected behavior. All right. Here, we'll just go back to the top one, just because that's, oh, also the other thing. Let's say that you didn't want to include a field. Like, let's say I didn't want to include the headline in my article serializer. We could just delete it from the list of fields. And I mean, headline just doesn't show up there. That's another benefit of using serializer, is it doesn't show you all of the data. So similarly, let's say that you made a custom, I mean, you guys know how to do user authentication now. So let's say that you made a custom user class and you have an API that somebody can tap into to get, let's say your users are like playing a video game and you want to get all of your, you can have your API get all of the users' data who are above level 500, something like that. Now, in your users tables, I'm sure as you guys have seen, one second, a giant roach just, oh, never mind, it's dead. Okay, sorry about that. Dorm life. The benefit of having a user serializer like this is if you just returned your user data using the serialize function, it would return your user's email, password, address, like all of the data that you are storing in your backend. It would spit all of that right in. Now, in that, do you really want the person on the other end using your API to have access to all of your users' sensitive data? I don't think so, which is why having these serializers in here that you can restrict the fields that they have access to is also super duper important. So that's the mini lecture on the virtue of serializers. Any questions about the serializers before I let you guys go?